Alrighty, just had a bunch of M&Ms, so I'm ready to go for video number 4, especially because I'm sitting on the couch and guess what's behind me? The School of Athens poster. The School of Athens, remember, Raphael, the red Ninja Turtle, painted it. It's the fresco. Remember, number 33. What is it? The School of Athens, besides the college that I wish I could have gone to when I was a Renaissance thinker back in the day. Remember, it's that fresco that's in the Pope's library in the Vatican. Ancient Greek and Roman philosophers are in there, and it's painted so it looks like there's a, quote, school in Athens, Greece. This quote unquote school in Athens is where Greek philosophers and Roman philosophers and scientists and mathematicians, they're teaching students the ways of the old. It's a Renaissance fresco that also has Roman architecture in it with the arches and the columns, and it also has statues with the Greek goddesses and gods in the background. Now, it's not a real school. I wish it could. I bet they'd have a really good debate team, but, that's what I got. That's my joke. So the School of Athens, Raphael, the Renaissance. Now, many of you know that I have a very severe fascination with the David, but not Donatello's bronze one. All right? The David, as in like David and Goliath, right? Like you know the biblical story. We got Donatello, the purple Ninja Turtle. His bronze, near life-size statue showed a very young-looking David that fought Goliath. And the big deal was that it was carved from one piece of bronze, super realistic. And it was impressive because it was done completely by hand. And it was a freestanding bronze statue, which made it one of the first ever. And it was a piece of artwork in the Renaissance where people looked at it and said, wow, this is realistic as it comes. Oh my goodness, this is perfection. But don't worry, Michelangelo, the orange Ninja Turtle, came back with a vengeance and made a 17-foot tall marble statue that is magnificent. And it is located in Italy. The hands are much larger than it's expected to show the strength of what David did to Goliath. Remember, he's holding that rock that he's about to sling and whack the Goliath with in the face. And he's standing there and he's got that look on his face and he is perfectly nude. They're both perfectly nude, but they're drawn to be perfectly, like their figures are supposed to look perfect. They're supposed to be very muscular. And what Michelangelo's David, reason why I say perfect so much, is that you even see like veins on their hands. And they even have fingernails. So it shows that the David, by the way, the most famous sculpture in the world, is the true depiction of the Renaissance. And I love me some orange Ninja Turtles. You know they ate pizza all the time, right? The blue Ninja Turtle, Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci just means of the Vinci province. It's not a cool last name. Leonardo da Vinci is a Renaissance man. What makes him a Renaissance man? I'm going to read this straight up. A Renaissance man is someone who has many talents. Da Vinci was an artist. He was an inventor. He was an author. He studied how things worked. He wanted to know how birds flew. I should say flew, not flied. He wanted to know how birds flew. He wanted to know how the body works. Remember, he cut up animals and he cut up humans to see how things work. How awesome is that? He even studied, he wanted to know how architecture worked. He even studied how birds made sounds. So he cut up organs and animal parts and tried to figure out how they made noises. And he made sketches of everything from the petals of a flower to muscles in an arm. He studied geometry, anatomy, engineering, sound, motion, weaponry, and he did this for fun. He did this because he wanted to know why things are the way they are. He even tried to learn and understood how the earth and the moon, the tides happened. He drew aerial maps of towns, bridges, weapons, machines, programmed to fly, underwater diving suit. He was the greatest Ninja Turtle of all time. And he was just awesome. He's in what's that movie called? The one with the dog and the guy. They go back in time. Peabody, right? Peabody and Sherman. They meet Leonardo da Vinci. He's painting the Mona Lisa. She never smiled. So if you're a Renaissance man, you are a man of many talents. The Seven Sacraments goes back to our Middle Ages unit, and our Middle Ages unit is of the religious aspect of it. So we've got the Seven Sacraments according to the Roman Catholic Church. In the 7 sacraments of the church, we have baptism, confirmation, the Eucharist, which the Eucharist is the eating of the cracker representing the body and drinking the wine, the blood of Christ, reconciliation, which is confession to a priest, anointing the sick, and marriage and matrimony, and holy orders. The sacraments are very similar to that of Lives of Judaism. Confirmation is kind of like your bar, bat mitzvah, and marriage, matrimony, that concept, that's known, that's when you get married under the chuppah and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that is. And then confession, Yom Kippur, you go and you confess your sins. So those are the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. We kind of looked at this a second ago when I talked about Gutenberg in the last video, but why are books so rare in the Middle Ages? I mean, they were almost all handwritten. So you had to be, first of all, you had to be literate. Second of all, you had to have great handwriting. Third of all, you had to be patient. And fourth of all, you know how hard it is to write a book? I mean, really, go home and write a book by hand. Almost all of these books are handwritten. And when the barbarians invaded Rome and the Roman Empire, they stole some of these books, destroyed some of these books. And so some of these books and these texts were lost. Also, the church did everything they could to control the knowledge that was in the Middle Ages of that. Not be like, okay, it's the Middle Ages, now we have control over the information. No, they were the ones that preserved and saved the books. And remember, most often and not, the books back then in the Middle Ages, they were more or less religious texts than anything else. And again, not everyone could read, so there weren't as many books published. And the books that were published were, well, mainly religious books. And so that's why, again, I said this in the last video, that's why you have more stained glass windows in art. Remember? The illuminated manuscripts, that's on the test. There's like a picture of it. All right. It's a good thing we have books today, but you guys just go on the internet. The 2 nations that were most dominant during the Age of Exploration. You will not believe this, but this comes from our Age of Exploration unit. It was Spain and Portugal. They were the most dominant nations. That's why South America today speaks so much Portuguese and Spanish, and Mexico and Central America. So because of that, this is why the Southern America and Central America speaks Portuguese and Spanish, because they were the dominant nations during the Age of Exploration. Now, the Age of Exploration, we're kind of cheating here when we say Age of Exploration, because we're only talking about European exploration. The Chinese did explore. You did have the Russians explore. You did have the Indonesians explore. But we're looking at this as an age of European exploration. Remember the Columbian Exchange picture? Well, anyways, there were many pros and cons to the Age of Exploration, and it depends on where you're looking at it, right? If you're a European nation, some of the pros was that your empire was expanded because you acquired more land. Because you acquired more land and expanded your empire, you had access to more resources, which made you wealthier. Also, you were able to spread your culture to these indigenous peoples. You were able to spread your religious and values. So some Europeans looked at the indigenous peoples in South America, in Africa, in North America, in Central America, and said, these people need to be converted to Christianity. We need to change their way of lives. They're too primitive. Their lifestyles are different. We need to modernize them. And so that was considered to be a thing that the Europeans wanted to do, but it's not necessarily a pro from a native standpoint. The cons or the negative effects of the European Age of Exploration from the 1400s to the 1600s, disease. Do you not remember that it killed 90% of the natives? Things like the flu. Things like the flu and things like whooping cough and, like malaria. All diseases, they all came from Europe, and smallpox. They killed all of the natives. They'd never been around these diseases before, and so they all got really sick. One of the biggest effects, too, race-based slavery. I would say disease was the number one thing that the Europeans brought from Europe over to the Americas, because, again, disease is what killed 90% of the indigenous people. Race-based slavery, the introduction of Africans being captured for slavery, because Africans were looked at as different. and they had different language, different faith, different customs, and the Europeans were able to physically overpower the Africans and then bring them over to North, South, and Central America. Another con would be the conquering of all of these people, the pillaging or destroying and taking of resources by the Europeans from the indigenous people's lands. Religion is forced onto the natives, and there's a tremendous loss of culture as millions of these South and North and Central American indigenous peoples were killed because of disease. So their cultures died out, their ways of life died out, and they're forced into assimilation, a way of being forced to practice and live the way those that invaded did so, right? So that would be there are a lot of effects of the Age of Exploration. The Columbian Exchange is another big thing that comes from the Age of Exploration. Remember the Columbian Exchange, the map? It's got Europe and Africa and the Americas, and it's the triangle trade of goods and diseases that go from the three continents. It's that triangle trade from Europe to Africa to the Americas, then back to Europe. Remember, they're exchanging goods, they're exchanging diseases, and humans all over the world, right? Like tomatoes are not native to Europe, but they make pizza there. Corn is not native to Europe, but they have it there. Honeybees are not native to North America, like all these things. Okay, pineapples, they're not native to North America. So you see that there's certain food. Pumpkins are not native to Europe. I could go on and on. Now I'm thinking of the picture. It's a lot of things, right? So all these different fruits and vegetables, gold, guns, sugar, corn, they're spread all over the world. And I guarantee you, when people found out how awesome sugar was, they immediately started eating it like cereal. I would. We're going to finish these last two numbers because they have to do with the same era, the Age of Exploration. So Columbus's exchange between the 1400s and 1600s of the goods that went from Point Olive to Point Bet to Point Tet. Now we have Hernan Cortez. He was a Spanish explorer, and he invaded Mexico and killed all of the Aztecs, which was the largest empire in present-day Mexico at the time. I mean, they were gigantic. They had pyramids, they had river systems, they had boat travel, they had markets, they had irrigation. They were like the Roman Empire of Central America. But when Cortez and his Spanish conquistadors, conquistador means conqueror, when they came, they pretty much wiped out all of the Native American population. Not because they had weaponry, but because once they got the Aztecs, once they infected the Aztecs with disease, they all pretty much died off. And remember, Cortez was looked at kind of like a godlike figure. I don't remember if you remember that, because there were prophets in the texts of the Aztecs that said that a great white ghost or a great white figure would come to the people, and, well, Cortez and the Europeans were white. And they brought horses with them, which was a new thing that was brought over to North, South, and Central America. Horses had never been there. Pigs, too. I can't get over all this stuff. Cattle. Chickens. There's a lot of stuff now that I'm, like, looking at the map on the wall. So, anyways, that's who Cortez was. Now, Bartolome Las Casas, he was the man who traveled with Columbus. He was a priest, and he went with Columbus in the 1490s to the Caribbean islands. And he saw Spanish exploration and colonization and said, oh my God, this is horrible what we are doing to the people. He, a priest, a very religious man, respectable religious figure, looked at slavery as a sin and saw that the natives were enslaved. He saw the disease that killed the natives. He saw the forced trade between the indigenous and the Europeans, stealing goods and taking goods from the people. He saw people forced to convert to Christianity or killed. He went back to Europe and said, this is horrible. This is what we as the Spanish people are doing to the natives. We need to stop this. This is not what good Christian Spanish-speaking people should do. And so he basically exposed the awfulness and the atrocities of this age of exploration. This is a long video, I know, but I got you all the way up to number 42. So enjoy that one, gang.